is going to be Wonder Vision, how Amadeus is leading the comeback for travel apps. This is thanks to YouAppi, one of our amazing sponsors. Be the last sponsor-involved session of the day. We're going to have Geil. He's going to talk to Michael Bayle, and they're going to have a great conversation. But let's just get right over to it. So, Leo, this virtual stage now belongs to you.
Hey, Michael, how are you, buddy?
Hey, man, how are you? Long time.
Been a long time, and ironically, we're talking about travel industry today, and I think the first time we got to know each other, I brought you with me to Sicily.
Yes, you did.
And we had some fun playing around in the Mediterranean and sailing around the sea.
Absolutely. Good times.
And you sailed yourself all the way over to Barcelona, to Madrid, and now you sit in Madrid, and tell us about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I work for Amadeus, which is based here in Madrid, and we're a large technology firm that really powers the ecosystem of travel, from airports to hotels to airlines, and of course to those who sell travel experiences to consumers. And I particularly look after an area that focuses in retail.
Awesome. Congratulations. I know you've been there a while and you're having a great time doing it. I see you posting all over the world, and that's exciting. And unfortunately, over the past year and a half, things have slowed down, so I don't see as many posts, but I hope to see them soon.
Exactly.
With Amadeus being a prolific travel company powering the back end of these reservation systems for all the world's travel companies, what ways is 2020 accelerated the technology and innovation you guys are focusing on to come back stronger and bigger than ever?
Yeah, of course. There's this interesting meme that's circulating that asks aloud, who's responsible for your digital strategy? And they ask, is it the CEO? Is it the CTO? Or is it a C19, right? And it's been a godsend. Unfortunately, the pandemic, of course, has affected millions. But genuinely, for old dinosaurs like you and I in the mobile industry, it has resurrected what we've long wished for, which is people's use of technologies, people's use of mobility in particular, to have access to things at their fingertips genuinely. So more tangibly, and I have to laugh aloud because you and I always would patrol the halls of Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, and we would just sit there and go, well, what are these QR codes? Whatever, they going to have meaningfulness and blah, blah, blah. And let's be honest, now if anyone has been educated on the use of a QR code, it has been the invitation to how to really interact in the world. From everything from appearing at a restaurant and trying to get those old school paper menus, which of course now are challenging, to more things related to the travel industry. So specifically, we're quite excited that we've introduced a lot of different elements to help alleviate frustrations of the traveler and those who interact with the traveler. So more relevantly, we have something called Traveler ID, as interestingly named, it could be also as obviously named as you can think. And of course, having a credential and adjacent to your passport and to your visa eligibilities, now it is your COVID results or your vaccination results. And we've been able to create this in short order. And large airlines, as large as right now, Air Europa, which of course, if you travel soon from the States to visit me in Spain, Air Europa is a very logical choice in their application when you as a consumer, across all the different steps you need to do to validate your check-in process, we're empowering that part of it so that the consumer can feel very safe of their data as they upload it to the airline.
So I guess what you're saying is now you have kind of like a travel ID, a travel badge that kind of lets you travel seamlessly, maybe less friction throughout the world.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't yet apply for discounts at the rooftop of the W Barcelona, which we also used to frequent, but it does work to get you on board the plane.
And so you'll see all these other companies implementing this type of technology, you think? Michael?
I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think what also people want is trust with whom it is that they person to that travel. So the challenge today, of course, is a myriad of different providers, and you really genuinely as a consumer don't know whom are the ones you can trust and whom may have more nefarious motivations. And so by having something that's an industry standard, and we are considered an industry standard as Amadeus, we feel there's a good ecosystem that will gravitate to this, just like Air Europa has.
Interesting. So, okay, cool. So now we're going to have a much more seamless travel experience, one in which it takes this COVID-19 world and adopts some of the challenges we're facing. How are these travel companies or travel companies in general, how are you going to go about re-engaging some of those former consumers and putting their butts back in the seat?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, still, and I applaud the states for leading the vaccination efforts globally, but a lot of countries are far from there. So I think we're going to be at the mercy of PCR test, antigen test, COVID test. So let's start with that as a real frustration. People don't know. And it's a very ever-flowing subject matter of whether or not I need a test, and within what duration do I need that test between when I arrive and from when I left. And it really differs by country, and it differs between eligibility of countries. So more pointedly, we've encouraged our travel sellers to get in the game, right? It's very difficult to sell travel if you can't also sell relief that a consumer can get testing. So one functional example of this is in Germany, many of our travel sellers and our agencies, particularly those with brick and mortar, they've partnered with the right laboratory companies to create testing facilities on the spot as a consumer is there interacting with the agents to understand where could they travel this summer. Can they travel to Greece? Can they travel to Mallorca? What have you? So that's the first example. Other examples we're seeing from airlines, and I believe United Airlines is one of the leading examples of this in the States, is being able to order testing through their applications and through their services. So you can have quick delivery of self-diagnosed testing equipment that then you can use those results with certainty as part of your travel experience. So I think anything to alleviate the concerns of how do I travel and can I get tested, that our travel sellers, whether they're the airlines or the agents, to be involved in is a upcoming big activity for them, certainly for the next 12 to 18 months.
In your opinion, how far along are we in this recovery on travel? Like, are we just scratching the surface? I'm sure Europe is different than the States. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think if we had a crystal ball, we would be betting men, right? It's a challenge to answer this. And unfortunately, as we've all seen, we're seeing ebbs and flows, right? So on markets like India, I believe they're going backwards. So the closest thing we're monitoring, of course, and we're constantly in interaction with is what are the government bodies doing and keeping close tabs towards those regulations that are the most important. You're seeing the emergence of travel bubbles. Right. So if you look at airline, if you look at Australia and New Zealand, I think they very comfortably have said, don't come visit us anytime soon. Right. So Australia is fairly closed until mid 2022. However, people can freely travel from Australia to New Zealand and a pocket of islands within under this concept of travel bubbles. We're seeing that also emerge in Asia. So I think with the travel bubbles, we can have a confidence that travel is beginning to emerge, no matter what some restrictions may otherwise appear.
I see it now. I jump on a flight. I feel like it's back to the old days here in the States.
Oh, great.
I'm thinking, not all the time, but sometimes I jump on, it's a full flight. I did travel during COVID for some personal issues, and I remember it would be like 2 or 3 people on a flight. Now it's a full flight. I just came from South Florida to San Francisco. It was a full flight, and I'm thinking, wow, man, I was kind of liking it when the tickets were cheaper. Now the tickets are getting much more expensive. So I should have booked like my whole next year of travel in advance. So that's interesting. Well, tell me.
I recently went to the States for what I call a vaxcation, right? So, right in early April, I think the governor first said, hey, all ages are eligible now. As you know, I used to be a New York resident, still carry that license. And I got the first flights I could. I flew through TAP, Portugal, which is obviously through Lisbon. And nonetheless, to your point, it was a really inexpensive fare. And normally you and I are kind of motivated to get a little more room, some cocktails in the travel experience. But I'm like, why would I pay for a premium experience then, knowing full well that the seats were pretty empty? And so, yes, I had a whole cabin to myself, not a full row, but a cabin, right? And then the liquor cabinet to myself.
That's cool. And I noticed you guys have a pretty cool app. What's the name of that app that you guys?
It's called Check My Trip. It's something I'm quite proud of. It was one of the reasons I was recruited to Amadeus. It's not something I continue to manage directly, but we've been able to collect millions of users using it. And it's actually won the best travel application now the last 3 years in a row. And what its essence is really to appreciate that your itinerary, particularly your itinerary of past, which you said from South Florida to San Francisco, pretty finite, pretty rigid. And more or less when delays occurred, it was because of rainstorms or the fog of California, what have you. But nowadays, right, particularly international travel, you're not so certain. And there's a lot of fluidity with cancellations, with plane size changes, what have you. So that dynamism is something, of course, we wish to, on behalf of our traveler sellers, update the consumers as frequently as we can, firstly. And secondly, to remind them again of those regulations we spoke of, because they could ever change when you have left your home market and then when you're looking to return. By the time of that return, there may be new introduction of the kind of COVID testing you need. And then lastly, to give comfort to the traveler all the while that there's ways for them to purchase touchless experience. Most formidably, can I be in an airport lounge, perhaps with social distancing as I have my family with me? Can I purchase a transfer from a airport to the hotel, particularly in destination I don't live and don't really understand the context of Uber and taxis and things like this. All of this is at your fingertips within Check My Trip. We work with a very strong network of partners to provide those services, even services to leapfrog sometimes the queues you might see when you arrive at the airport in terms of fast track and things that we take for granted as premium travelers of past.
Excellent. I'm definitely going to download Check My Trip. That sounds like a great tool to have when I'm restarting my travel plans, especially internationally with all the...
That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So, Michael, the interesting thing that, one of my most curious questions for you is, a guy like you, the godfather of mobile, builds this awesome map, starts to travel the world again. Where's the first stop in Michael Bayle's destination list?
Upcoming. Yeah, well, I have two. I've had this developing bucket list. I'm involved a lot in managing teams in the Middle East. And quite frankly, I think outside of Dubai, I haven't had much experience there. And unfortunately, just before the pandemic, there was a really sexy campaign that was basically saying, you're not going to believe where this is. And it was all kinds of rivers and forests and abilities to do whitewater rafting. It was Saudi Arabia, right? So this area is maybe not middle of summer, but Saudi Arabia and Oman and some of these places that I've just neglected because I never appreciated they would have tourism on top of their list, have really been considerate to recognize that shortcoming and have actually flaunted what they have as natural resources to attract to consumers and tourists to come visit them. And then more pragmatically, because of course I'm not going to go there in the middle of summer, some of the folks we know in common who are living in Miami, we're trying to recruit them over to do some trips, some sailing trips to Greece. So I'll be in Greece most of August. Fingers crossed.
Where in
I think
Greece?
Mykonos, Paros, I guess. And then I'm open-minded to other places you probably go.
When we did our first like $50 or $60 million year, we took the company to Crete, almost 300 of us. Lovely little seaside town. Won't disappoint, and I think you'll find a lot of charm. So,
awesome! I'll hit you up after for those lists.
Maybe, yes, for sure. Please. So, Michael, thank you for your time today.
Leo, it's a pleasure. Miss you very much. Thank you.
Face to face sooner than later.
Absolutely.
Maybe in Greece. Who knows?
Definitely. Take care, my friend.
Thanks, Leo. That was great. Thank you, Michael. You want to talk to them, go to the speaker green room below. Thank you, YouAppi. And of course, can't forget Addictive. And last but certainly in no way least is AppsFlyer. Thank you very much.